Tēnā koutou katoa. Sorry for the breaking into that rather nice music. Not sure what it was, sorry. It's Chris. My name's Chris. And this is The Pulse. And this is The Pulse pre-Christmas show. So something a bit different today. Not a topic to kind of look at and dig into in any sort of deep and meaningful way, but just a look at this time of year, really. Christmas. What's it all about? And we're going to play some music. And I'm going to read you a couple of pieces as well, which are of a Christmas nature. So that's what we're here today to do. Anyway, I hope you're having a really, good kind of slow kind of move into what I hope is going to be a great Christmas Day, New Year for you. It's a funny time of the year, isn't it? We've got a stylised notion of what Christmas is about. Happy families round the dinner table, for some reasons that are still unclear to me, eating hot food, typically on a hot summer's day, in the middle of the day. But lots of bonhomie and joy and happiness. But we know that that's not the case for everybody, without getting too kind of deep and dark about it, because not everyone has a family that they can sit around the table with. Some people do it hard and they do it by themselves, and possibly more so at this time of the year. Down below us where we are here, the Arrow FM studio, the Masterton Food Bank operates, and I popped in on the way in, and they put out more food parcels yesterday than they put out since the COVID really hit. So, some people in need. And for other people, not all families are necessarily kind of totally functional, so that's stylised, everyone's happy. Some people find Christmas tough. But anyway, today we're here not to kind of analyse that in any great depth, but to listen to some music, listen to some words, not my words, you'll be pleased to hear, but the words of other people who write incredibly well. And in terms of accessing the music, I'm going to do something which is not of my generation. No, for those of you watching on Wairarapa TV, I'm looking straight down the camera at you at the moment, and I'm saying, look at me, do I look like the Spotify generation? And the answer to that question is a resounding no. I am not Spotify. But I'm going to try and use Spotify off my mobile phone to play the music. So fingers crossed, everybody. Let's hope it all works. And let's start with something that we played earlier on in the year, and I love it, and it's New Zealand, and it's Blam Blam Blam, and I'm going to push go.
They're making agreements, they're keeping each other in line. I want you to be happy, but I'd rather that you were still with me. Perhaps we can arrange something. took pride in my even hair, and I took control of what you'd understand. If all things were equal, I could be a friend. I could turn around and take it again. There's 5 blue figures on a white circle. They're making agreements. They're keeping each other in line. I want you to be happy, but I'd rather that you were still with me. Perhaps we can arrange something, arrange something.
And that was Blam 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 and Don't Fight This. Oh, it's bigger than both of us. Anyway, some New Zealand music to start off with on this pre-Christmas show. So, Christmas. Now, I was doing a bit of research on Christmas, although at my age I've been through quite a few of them, some better than others. So I've got a fairly good idea. Now, obviously, Christmas, it's a religious festival, but it's also, I guess the word we'd use is secular, meaning it's non-religious in a number of respects. And I'm not going to go into the religious part of it because I'm not an authority on it. Although I have to say, as someone who's not a practicing Christian, but agnostic, I'm drawn to churches at this time of the year. I'm drawn to the sense of community that comes with being with others and singing songs in full voice. And just the whole narrative around a new start, a new child, the wonder of that birth under adverse circumstances. So that's quite appealing. And also, and this is sort of strongly personal for me, my hometown is Christchurch, and my earlier memories are of going into the Christchurch Cathedral, which is now in a state of disrepair and hopefully will be rebuilt in the not-too-distant future. And up around what I would kind of characterise as the altar, but I'm sure there's another word for it in a Anglican Church of England church, cathedral. At this time of the year, there was a Christmas tree, and my mother would take myself and my brother, and maybe even my sister at some stage. I was the oldest. And beneath that tree, we would place presents for children who were doing it tough at this time of the year. So That's an imprint for me, and it's an imprint to do with the church and to do with giving, and to do with giving to others who are less advantaged. So is that religious or is that secular? From my point of view, I think it might be a bit of both, because those rules are good rules to live by, whether or not you happen to believe in a higher power or not. Anyway, Christmas as we know it. Doing a bit of research. And Charles Dickens comes up in the context of Christmas as we know it. And in many respects, the kinds of things we do in Christmas, even in this part of the world, and even though we inherit the rituals, many of them for those of us who are Pākehā European, from our colonial sort of predecessors, we do them here. But my research showed that in the early 1800s, back in Europe, say in Britain, Christmas was falling out of fashion. Those of a Puritan persuasion disapproved of it. I found an article and it says this: puritanical religious leaders disapproved of the decadent feasting and the pagan influences of medieval Christmas. Most businesses did not allow time off for the holiday, and most of England was so extremely poor and overworked at the end of the Industrial Revolution that there was little money or energy for merrymaking. And child labour was common. Workhouses with brutal conditions were a popular so-called solution to poverty. The dominant political ideology, so we are getting some politics into this, of the rich was that the poor should be made miserable in order to motivate them to stop being poor, or else they should be allowed to starve to decrease the surplus population. Now that's really crude and blunt and nasty. But into that kind of context, enter Charles Dickens. And Charles Dickens had grown up working in factories as a child, and he didn't agree that torture and an early death were effective means to end poverty. And by 1843, he was already a popular fiction author, and he really wanted to use his clout. This is someone who had a sense that, through the power of the pen and the word and the publishing, he could make a difference. So he wanted to use his clout to help impoverished children. So he started writing a political pamphlet. Oh, politics is coming back again. And it was titled An Appeal to the People of England on Behalf of the Poor Man's Child. But he was worried that no one was going to care about his own sort of passionate social justice rants. And he decided to rebrand his pamphlet as a ghost story. Everyone likes a ghost story. And as from this article that I have says, because the Victorians may have hated the poor, but they freaking loved ghosts. And the book came out on December 19th, and it was entitled A Christmas Carol. And by Christmas Eve, the entire first edition had sold out. It became a Christmas craze in England, and it almost single-handedly revived the holiday traditions that now dominate this time of year. So what I want to do is just to read, not A Christmas Carol, you'll be pleased to hear, but there were short stories that came out of A Christmas Carol. And this one is Charles Dickens, and it's Tiny Tim Children's Short Story. A short Christmas story by Charles Dickens. And this short story really captures the essence of that whole Christmas Carol. Let me start. There was once a man who did not like Christmas. His name was Scrooge, and he was a hard, sour-tempered man of business, intent on only saving and making money and caring nothing for anyone. He paid the poor, hard-working clerk in his office as little as he could possibly get the work done for, and lived on as little as possible himself, alone in 2 dismal rooms. He was never merry or comfortable or happy. and he hated other people to be so, and that was the reason why he hated Christmas, because people will be happy at Christmas, you know, if they possibly can. Well, it was Christmas Eve, a very cold and foggy one, and Mr. Scrooge, having given his poor clerk unwilling permission to spend Christmas Day at home, locked up his office and went home himself in a very bad temper. After having taken some gruel, as he sat over a miserable fire in his dismal room, he got into bed, had some wonderful and disagreeable dreams, to which we will leave him whilst we see how Tiny Tim, the son of his poor clerk, spent Christmas Day. Now, the name of this clerk was Bob Cratchit. He had a wife and 5 other children beside Tim, who was a weak and delicate little cripple, gentle and patient and loving, with a sweet face of his own, which no one could help looking at. It was Mr. Cratchit's delight to carry his little boy out on his shoulder to see the shops and the people, and today he had taken him to church for the first time. "Whatever has got your precious father and your brother Tiny Tim?" exclaimed Mrs. Cratchit. "Here's dinner all ready to be dished up. I've never known him so late on Christmas Day before." "Here he is, mother," cried Belinda, and "Here he is," cried the other children, as Mr. Cratchit came in, his long comforter hanging 3 feet from under his threadbare coat. For cold as it was, the poor clerk had no top coat. Tiny Tim was perched on his father's shoulder. "How did Tim behave?" asked Mrs. Cratchit. "As good as gold and better," replied his father. "He told me coming home that he hoped the people in church who saw he was a cripple would be pleased to remember on Christmas Day who it was who made the lame to walk." "Bless his sweet heart," said the mother in a trembling voice. Dinner was waiting to be dished up. Mrs. Cratchit proudly placed a goose upon the table. Belinda brought in the apple sauce and Peter the mashed potatoes. The other children set chairs. Tim's, as usual, close to his father's, and Tim was so excited that he rapped the table with his knife and cried, "Hurrah!" After the goose came the pudding, all ablaze with its sprig of holly in the middle, and was eaten to the last morsel. Then apples and oranges were set upon the table, and a shoveful of chestnuts on the fire, and Mr. Cratchit served round some hot sweet stuff out of a jug as they closed around the fire and said, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us. God bless us every one," echoed Tiny Tim. And then they drank each other's health and Mr. Scrooge's health, and told stories and sang songs. Now, in one of Mr. Scrooge's dreams on Christmas Eve, a Christmas spirit showed him his clerk's home. He saw them all, heard them drink his health, and he took special note of Tiny Tim himself. How Mr. Scrooge spent Christmas Day we do not know, but on Christmas night he had more dreams, and the spirit took him again to his clerk's poor home. Upstairs the father, with his face in his hands, sat beside a little bed on which lay a tiny figure, white and still. Tiny Tim died because his father was too poor to give him what was necessary to make him well. "You kept him poor," said the dreamer spirit to Mr. Scrooge. The father kissed the cold little face on the bed and went downstairs, where the sprays of holly still remained about the humble room, and taking his hat went out with a wistful glance at the little crutch in the corner as he shut the door. Mr. Scrooge saw all this, but wonderful to relate, he woke the next morning feeling as if he had never felt in his life before. "Why, I am as light as a feather, and as happy as an angel, and as merry as a schoolboy," he said to himself. "I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and here's a happy Merry New Year to the world, to all the world." Poor Bob Cratchit crept into the office a few minutes late, expecting to be scolded for it, but his master was there with his back to a good fire and actually smiling, and he shook hands with his clerk, telling him heartily he was going to raise his salary, and asking quite affectionately after Tiny Tim. "And mind you make up a good fire in your room before you set to work, Bob," he said, as he closed his own door. Bob could hardly believe his ears and eyes, but it was all true. Such things as they had on New Year's Day had never been seen before in the Cratchits' home, nor such a turkey as Mr. Scrooge sent them for dinner. Tiny Tim had his share too, for Tiny Tim did not die, not a bit of it. Mr. Scrooge was a second father to him from that day. He wanted for nothing and grew up strong and hearty. Mr. Scrooge loved him, and well he might, For was it not Tiny Tim who had unconsciously, through the Christmas dream spirit, touched his hard heart and caused him to become a good and happy man? So that's Charles Dickens' Tiny Tim children's short story. So it's time now for a little bit more music. And the second track is, well, the second track's going to be, I think, from Joni Mitchell. And it's going to be a track Coyote.
No regrets, Coyote. We just come from such different sets of circumstance. I'm up all night in the studios and you're up early on your ranch. You'll be brushing out a broodmare's tail while the sun is ascending, and I'll just be getting home with my reel-to-reel. There's no comprehending just how close to the bone and the skin and the eyes and the lips you can get, and still feel so alone, and still feel related, like stations in some relay. You're not a hit-and-run driver, no, no, racing away. You just picked up a hitcher, prisoner around the white lines on the freeway. Saw a farmhouse burning down in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. We rolled right past that tragedy till we turned into some roadhouse lights where a local band was playing. Locals were up kicking and shaking on the floor. The next thing I know, that coyote's at my door. He pins me in a corner and he won't take no. He drags me out on the dance floor and we're dancing close and slow. Now he's got a woman at home, he's got another woman down the hall. He seems to want me anyway. Why'd you have to get so drunk and lead me on that way? You just picked up a hitcher, a prisoner out the white lines on the freeway. Coyote right in the face on the road to Baljenny near my old hometown. He went running through the whisker weed, chasing some prize down, and a hawk was playing with him. Coyote was jumping straight up and making passes, and those same eyes just like yours under your dark glasses, privately probing the public rooms, peeking through keyholes in number.
Okay, sorry about that. We're back. And that was Joni Mitchell, Coyote, who was slightly interrupted by George Harrison, which kind of gives away something that might be coming up. But anyway, we were talking about Charles Dickens, and I read you that short story, which captures the essence of Dickens' classic work, A Christmas Carol. Don't want to talk much more about that, other than to say that, as I said before, Christmas, went out of fashion for a while, and those of a puritanical persuasion said, no, we can't have that. Celebration, eating, enjoying each other's company, those sorts of things. So, but we get a bunch of things coming out of Charles Dickens' contribution to rehabilitating Christmas and the Christmas spirit. Christmas carols for a start, and it's there in the title of that work, A Christmas Carol. Maybe it doesn't happen as much as it used to, but one of my, again, earlier memories is of the Salvation Army Band, and some of you folk may kind of recall this too. and they'd be seated on the back of a truck, and they'd come round and they'd play Christmas carols. And there'd be collectors going up and down, and you would put a coin maybe in the collection box, and you could even go out and give them requests. So Mother would say, go out and request Away in a Manger. So dutifully, I would go off and I would say, please, can you play Away in a Manger? And that's what they did. So, early Christmas memories. And I guess when we come to Christmas Day this year, or even Christmas Eve and Midnight Mass, there'll be people in full voice singing Christmas carols. And I think, singing in full voice, whatever you're singing and wherever you're doing it, is really good for you. Really blast it out, whether it's a Christmas carol or Bruce Springsteen or someone else, just blast it out. Christmas trees. Now, when Charles Dickens' writing, this is Queen Victoria's on the throne, and she marries Prince Albert. And Prince Albert is German, and it's a German tradition that you have Christmas trees. So that was something that the British embraced, and now there are Christmas trees everywhere. Personally, I have a preference for the real thing. Nothing better than pine needles. I know it's difficult afterwards to sort of have to get rid of them and recycle them and those sorts of things. And some people say it's better to get the sort of, the plasticky ones and dismantle them and put them back in the box and you can have the same Christmas tree for 20 years. Anyway, that's just my preference. But Christmas trees come out of this period with Dickens, and we've got Prince Albert to thank for that, and Queen Victoria. Gift giving comes out of this period as well. Now, gift-giving, I think, the old secular versus the religious, there's nothing, you talk to business people at the moment and they say, well, it's good, people are buying things, and that's good for the economy and good for small businesses, good for people, all over the place, whether it's the farmers market or whether it's down Main Street here. But then there's the giving of the gifts, and there's something there that is just good in its essential nature without the kind of commercial side of it as well. And a gift given without any sense of anything in return is the purest of gifts. So gift giving, that's part of the season as well. And paid holidays, that came through strongly, didn't it, in that short story. And, thankfully, we live in a society where, people get paid holidays. And they also get paid sick leave and domestic leave, and that's been increased recently. So, that's a good thing. And food. The food came through strongly in the short story as well. I'm not a fan, I have to say, of what I think is the British tradition of, that kind of hot meal in the middle of the day. The roast lamb, the gravy, everyone feeling, just absolutely full up afterwards. Anyway, food and the consumption of food is an important part of what we do as well. So, okay, we're going to go and have another piece of music now. This is the second to last piece of music we're going to have. And this one is another favourite of mine. And this one is George Harrison. And that's George Harrison's My Sweet Lord. And that was an album that came out in 1970. Now, why do I know that? Because recently on social media, it was Twitter actually, there was a one of those posts that said, okay, post up images of, without saying how old you are, 4 albums that came out when you were 14. Okay, so given it away. I was 14 in 1970. And All Things Must Pass, which was the album, came out in 1970 when I was 14. And another album came out in 1970 when I was 14, and that album was Let It Be. Now, something wonderful's happened this week, and it involves Sir Peter Jackson, and it involves a massive amount of film. I think it's 130 hours maybe that Sir Peter Jackson has of the Beatles around the time that the whole Let It Be album was being put together. Now, the narrative up until now, I guess, has been that the Beatles were increasingly kind of, I don't know, as an entity, fractious. They weren't getting on. There were creative tensions. There was the whole kind of Yoko Ono conspiracy thing. John sort of not wanting to be with the group anymore, being distracted. And there was a movie around Let It Be, and the images from that movie showed a group of people who weren't really enjoying each other's company. And you might recall, those of you who've seen it, they were on top of a building somewhere in London playing a number. Must have been kind of wintry because they were all wrapped up in woolen jackets and these sorts of things. But there's, Peter Jackson's put together an initial cut from the raw material that he's got, and it's a completely different story. What we see bunch of people who really like each other, who are getting on, who are enjoying making music together, who are acting the goat, who are sitting there at a mixing table, a much bigger version of the one that I've got in front of me at the moment. And it's uplifting, and it's wonderful it's coming out at this time of the year, because I guess in my not perfect world, there are lots of things I'd like to change in my perfect world, but my perfect world has the Beatles, I don't know, you can't say staying together like the Rolling Stones into their 70s, but at least the Beatles kind of going down different pathways while still enjoying a sense of mutual love and respect for each other. And that's what comes through in this footage that Sir Peter Jackson has now, and he's making it into a movie, and the movie's going to come out next year. So it's another reason to look forward to 2021. A Beatles movie in 2021, yay! And so, well, look forward to that. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the program. And we've looked at Christmas, and we've looked at Charles Dickens, and we've looked at his writing and what motivated him, A Christmas Carol, and we've looked at what we take out of that period in terms of gift giving and Christmas carols and food and these sorts of things. Well, let's bring it back home to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the way in which I want to do that is by reading out a piece that's been crafted by Penny Ashton. Now, Penny Ashton is a comedienne. She's an actress, a performance poet, a wedding celebrant, a social commentator, jazz hand, Jane Austen enthusiast. She's a regular on Radio New Zealand Nationals, The Panel. That's that other station you may have heard of that, a small number of people listen to. The originator of Poetry Idol, and she's had a show that she's toured around Aotearoa, New Zealand, Promise and Promiscuity, a musical by Jane Austen and Penny Ashton. Anyway, Penny Ashton, who is an incredible wordsmith, put together an Aotearoa, New Zealand version of The Night Before Christmas. So this is Penny Ashton's The Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the batch Not even a wetter was making a scratch. Woolly socks were hung by the pot belly with care, in the hopes that Santa soon would be there. The children were snoozing in a light summer's breeze whilst dreaming of spongy pud and lime green cream freeze. And Dad in his walk shorts and me in my jandals had just settled down for a couple of handles. When out on the lawn I heard such a ruckus, I sprang from my lazy boy to see what the fuss was. I ran to the sliding door, gasping and wheezing, threw open the curtains and up to the Venetians. The moon on the sand and the trailer tarp lit the beach up, just like Eden Park. But still when I saw, I thought I was asleep. A miniature Kingswood, pulled by 8 tiny sheep. With a little old driver sipping a Fanta, I knew in a moment it had to be Santa. Faster than Farlap on steroids they came, and he cooeyed and shouted and called them by name. Now Kevin, now Charlene, now Rangy and Beck. On Daryl, on Shazza, on Bilbo and Shrek. To the top of the pagoda, to the top of the wall. Get in behind, get in behind, get in behind, all. As sandflies around a barbecue fly, when they sniff the snizzlers, sizzlers and take to the skies, so up to the top of the batch they flew, with a boot full of toys, and Santa Claus too. With a handbrake stop, they arrived on the roof, 4 Goodyear tyres and 32 hoofs, and as I quickly turned and ran to the lounge, out from the chimney Santa came with a bound. He was wearing board shorts and gumboots on foot, and his mambos were covered in 6-month-old soot. A bundle of toys he had on his back, as if on OE with a brand new backpack. He looked like he'd come from the beauty parlour, with rosy red cheeks like Pahutagawa, a gorgeous big grin and white as white hair, and wee little tufts growing out of his ears. He had a broad chest and a round bare gut that shook when he laughed like Jabba the Hutt. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly hobbit, and I laughed when I saw him. I couldn't stop it. He gave me a wink and a bonza thumbs up, and I quickly realised he wasn't a nut. He went straight to the socks without saying a thing and filled them with Barbies and Shrek 2 key rings. Then giving his nose a jolly good scratch, he flew up the chimney with an almighty flash. He jumped in the Kingswood and cranked the ignition, and then they took off like some NASA mission. But I think I could hear as he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all. Have a bloody good night. Thank you, Penny Ashton, for that wonderful, wonderful piece of writing. So I just want to echo what Penny Ashton had to say, and I'll leave the bloody out of it, and we'll go out today with the Beach Boys. Why not? It's summer, and this is a track that comes from a film that I tend to watch around this time of year, and the film is Love Actually, and the director of that film was born in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So here, going out with Christmas wishes to all of you, it's the Beach Boys, and it's God Only Knows.
Love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me, well, life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you. should ever leave me, the life would still go on, believe me. The world could show nothing to me, so what good would living do me? God only knows what I'd be without you, and God only knows what I'd be without you. God only knows what I'd be without. 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 God only knows what
Neri, kiri, hemeti. Ka kite anō.